All right, I'm halfway through. Maybe I'm 2/3 the way through your Huck 14 homeworks, and I need to do a stop and talk to you about what you're missing. So here we go. This, of course, is a puppy, and he is very, very asleep right now. He snores a lot, and at some point I need to record his snoring so you know what the puppy snores sound like. All right, so chapter 14, 15, 16, they're all really important chapters. They don't think they are. You don't think they are because it doesn't appear important. Nothing major starts to happen. But there are little things that are happening that are easy to miss. First is Jim argues with Huck as if he's an equal. He's not. He's a slave. Huck owns him. Huck could sell him in a second. But Jim's no longer in the, let me be generous. So if you think about how Jim acted when he first met Huck on the island and he was scared and how he played this game, he's not playing a game anymore. Right? So Jim hasn't changed. He's just sort of more honest with Huck. Huck also has to acknowledge that Jim has a level head and he was wrong about the adventures. So Huck says, I love to go on adventures, and Jim's like, shit, I almost got sold. And he explains all the problems to him. And then Huck says, oh, yeah. Now, note that Huck uses the N-word right there. When he does that, he's sort of trying to reassert a little whiteness. All right? So it's whenever he's been upstaged, because he's going to use it again, whenever he's been upstaged, he calls him the name. He uses it to put him down in his corner. That's why this is a book that has to have that word, because you have to see him do this. Because, of course, people do that too. In the argument, Jim is a dad and can't stand Solomon because he does not understand the idea of chopping a child in half. And then finally, Twain and Jim at the end make a very subtle point about race when they have the Frenchman talking. It's not obvious, but it's all there. All right. So in the first part, I said these kinds of things was adventures, but he said he didn't want no more adventures, and which makes perfect and absolute sense. He's trying to get across the river to get to Illinois to get free and then come back and get his family and go on. He doesn't need to have, oh my Lord, let's tell a story about this adventure when we got on the sinking boat. Absolutely not. And it seems that Huck understands that. Again, Huck's not honest with you, and this is Jim's story. So if you listen to how Jim tells it and how Huck reacts, that seems to be fine. Again, note that he uses the N-word there. Seem to have a level head. All right? Which just seems to be the way that Huck acknowledges that he lost the argument. He was wrong. Solomon. Now, I'm sorry this is so stupidly small. But Jim he says, well, do you know the story about Solomon? And Huck says, yes. So first, now we have a nice, interesting situation where Jim is a little bit more well-read than Huck is. And Jim argues from this from a very practical first-person point of view. The part that I did not select says, well, he had about 1 million wives and he had all these kids. And Jim's like, why in the world would you want to have 1 million wives? They're just going to argue with each other and scream at each other. And if you just want peace, the last thing you want to hear is wives screaming at each other or babies crying. And Huck has no experience, so he doesn't know. So, sure. And then they get into the Solomon story. Now, the Solomon story is, if you don't know the Bible, 2 women come forward with a baby, and each woman says the baby's hers. So Solomon says, well, we can solve this problem. Let's just cut the baby in half. At which point the real mother gives up the baby because she does not want the kid to be cut in half. Solomon understands this and gives the baby to the real mother. But Jim willfully misunderstands this, and Twain helps him out here a little bit by saying it's ridiculous to cut a kid in half. It's not like it's a dollar. He says it's like a dollar bill. You cut a dollar bill in half, it's not worth anything. The same thing is true with a kid. And he's arguing pretty hard about Solomon because the last thing he can imagine as a father who's not around his kids right now, and he wants to be, someone cutting his kids in half. And, of course, he can imagine somebody making those rules about his kids because they're black. All right, last thing out of Huck Finn. This is a little bit subtle. This is a little bit weird. So they're having this ridiculous argument about Frenchman talks different than that. And Huck makes a comparison that it's like a cow. Cows talk like cows, and Frenchmen are like cows. Well, that doesn't really sit well with Jim because he starts going into that. Because who's the person that gets compared to a cow all the time? A black man, not a slave. So he and Twain make this argument, which seems to make no sense, except if you replace it with the word slave. So, well, why ain't it natural and different for French? What? They're advertising insurance plans. Well, then there ain't no sense in a cat talking like a man. Is a cow a man or is a cow a cat? Well, it's a black man, you know. She ain't either of them. All right, so there's no business talking. So, is a cow a man? No. Okay. Well, a black man is just like a Frenchman. So a Frenchman should be able to talk like a person. Now, Jim, of course, has got this crazy get switched up so that he thinks everyone should speak English. But the argument of is a Frenchman a man can easily be is a black man a man. That's sort of where this thing is going. And Huck, of course, walks away from the argument because he lost. And guess what? He uses the N-word again. Can't teach one of them to argue. So I have thrown on the college assignment at the very beginning of it. And I want to get quickly into the part where we start doing... Oh, for Christ's sake. Where I want to get quickly into it where we start doing the college essay. And I want to start the college essay up probably next week. Because that's really important. That's really important. We need to have this thing done. Now, the college project was set up in a time before the virus. And who knows what colleges are going to be like next year. They're going to be around. They're going to have admissions. But a lot of the admissions is going to be very different than it is this year. So you need to sort of have a moving target in your head. This is what I hope to do, but we'll see how things work out next year. So I'm sort of starting you off a little, since you're all very smart and since you're going to go to nice places, I'm starting you off looking at those nice places as possible places you could go. And then we'll adjust next year as we start seeing how the colleges are working. Anyway, this poster from Middlebury College is sort of the poster I'm asking you to do. You don't need to do this poster this week. If you want to, go right ahead. If you don't want to, that's fine. We'll move on to something else. This poster was done using Pages. Pages on the Mac has a certain preset for posters, and you just fill in the pictures and off it goes. So let's suppose you don't want to do that. Well, you could use Slides in Google Slides and do something that way. Or you can use Adobe Spark, which you remember we used way back when. That also has all sorts of presets. There's 1,000 programs on the internet that allow you to put pictures and graphics together to do a preset thing. So I'm sure you're much smarter about that than I am. So this week, I'm looking for you to answer 3 questions. Are you interested in a big school or a little school? Are you interested in a school that's near or a school that's far? Are you interested in a school that is city, a school that is or in the country? These questions are the most important questions to ask because I want you to go away for 4 years, if we can, with the virus. I want you to go away for 4 years and not come back, except at Christmas and Thanksgiving, and maybe at the beginning of the summer before your internship starts. All right, I want you to go someplace and be like, this is awesome, I'm never leaving. All right, I don't want you hanging around Pittsfield High School for the next 4 years. So this is about you and your personal wishes, not what anybody else wants. So let's define terms here. Little is a school where you are likely to see the same people, some of the same people every day. All right, and if you go to a party, you're going to recognize half of the people in the party. Big is a place where the school has tens of thousands of people, and if you want to go and where you never get recognized again, but still be on campus, that'll be fine. University of Wisconsin, big. Williams College, little. Near, far. I use the hotel room for this thing. Does mom and dad, or mom or dad, or whoever it is, need a hotel room if they're going to visit you? So, Middlebury, my dear school, where I'm sending my son Beck, is about 2.5 hours away. So that qualifies, even though it's in Vermont, as near, because I can drive up, have dinner, drive back. All right. On the other hand, if he was at Colby, which is 6 hours away, I would need a hotel room. If you're in Philadelphia, your parents probably don't need a hotel room. If you're in Boston, they probably don't need a hotel room. If you're in Denver, they definitely need a hotel room. So that's near or far. Last but not least is city or country. This is kind of fuzzy because things that you might think of as city aren't, and things that you might think of as country are. City to me is that you're near a major urban area, which means if you want to get takeout Chinese food at 1 o'clock in the morning, you can. So if I'm at Tufts in Medford, which is kind of a smaller school, the big scale of things, but I can get takeout Chinese food at 1 o'clock in the morning, so it's a city school. On the other hand, if I'm at Williams, I can't. So therefore, I consider that a country school. Now, you can use whatever lines you want, but the idea is that you're not, if you're in the city, you're part of a big city area. So imagine that you go to Northeastern. Northeastern, big school in the city, great parties. You're going to crash the bars. You're going to have a wonderful time, and you're going to have all sorts of other places you can go. Or you can go to St. Mike's up in Vermont, where there's a lot of skiing and there's a lot of cows, and you're going to know all your classmates really, really well. And yeah, that's it. So you make these choices here, and then I want you to pick 5 schools that answer those choices. Now, you've probably already gone out and visited some schools, and you probably think, ooh, College is so dreamy, but I really want to be in the city. So then just don't worry about that. Just put down the schools that are going to fit what you sort of want. If you want to add College to it later, sure, go ahead. You can add College later, but you might want to start asking yourself questions. I will say that most people, when they go and visit a college, they fall in love with a college. They think it's awesome. It doesn't matter what college it is. They're going to think it's awesome, fair warning, I make fun of Endicott all the time. Everyone's going to go to Endicott, and they're going to see the ocean, they're going to see all the schools, they're going to see everywhere in a sweatshirt, and they're going to be like, oh, that's dreamy. And then they're going to find out it's a joke, and so they don't want to do it. So of those 5 schools, I'm going to ask you to pick one of those 5. This is all you have to do this week. If you want to start making that poster, go right ahead. But you don't have to. Now, on the poster, which you don't have to make until next week, there's a couple pieces of New York Times stuff I'm asking you to include. One is called an affordability index. Now, we're not going to worry too much about money for the application side of things. We'll keep an eye on it. We'll be aware of it. We'll see what's going to be there. But we're going to be looking for all sorts of scholarships that we're going to be playing the game. The affordability index says how much the school dedicates to financial aid. In other words, how good they are. So this list, this is the very top of its list, the purple. These are the best schools. So you have UCal Berkeley, which is great, and they are very affordable. You have Vassar, you have Amherst, both of which dedicate a lot of money to their financial aid. So that's great. Those are good schools for you to look at. And then we have some of the schools that Pittsfield High just loves. Worcester Polytech, Whoopee, Emerson, Rhode Island School of Design, and Elon. All of these schools are horrible with financial aid. In other words, they don't seem to offer enough money for kids to go to school there. We have people who've gone to all 4 of these schools and have done very well and have played the game so that they got the schools to give them a lot of financial aid. So this isn't a hard and fast rule. But it's one of these things where if you're at the bottom end of this list, if you're in the orange part of this list, you need to look at them very carefully to see what they're going to be doing for financial aid. Nobody should be going to college and leaving their undergraduate $120,000 in debt. Nobody. Very bad. There's another thing here, which is sort of a social mixing thing, which talks about how well the schools have rich kids, poor kids, and middle class kids, and they're all done there. They measure it by something called the Pell Grant, which is these numbers right here. It's another link that's on the assignment page. And the higher this thing is, the higher the numbers, the better it is for, again, having a mix of students on campus. Now, some of the things, this isn't the greatest thing in the world. One of the top schools is Harvard. Harvard is full of extremely rich people, but because the school's so rich, it can basically fund anybody who wants to go there. So that's sort of a part of it. Okay, the last thing on there is the U.S. News and World Report. The U.S. News and World Report it's crazy how it's become the gold standard, but it's the gold standard. So all of the colleges are fighting to get up on the top of the list. They all want to be in the top 10. This is Middlebury. Middlebury's number 7, and they're whining about number 7 because they think they should be number 1. So if they're all fighting about it, and they're all paying attention to the numbers the U.S. News and World Report uses to rank, and a lot of the stuff that you can find here is the stuff that they won't tell you right away in other places, like what the costs are. Now, as you go through there's a very detailed set of stats here that goes through all of the things that the school has and their financial aid and the people who go there and all the rest of that. That's all something I want you to sort of dig through and take a look at. So for me, I wanted far. Now, I was from Boston. I chose Middlebury. Middlebury is 4 hours from Boston, but it has a mountain range between the two of them, so you can't go back and forth to Middlebury easily in a day. So that's why it qualifies as far. Obviously, if I went to Hamilton from Boston, it's a lot further. But there you go. It's in the country. By God, it's in the country. All spring, all you smell is cow manure. It is deeply in the country, lots of it. And it's little. There are maybe 3,000 people, students who go to Middlebury, maybe less. So after a month, you've seen everybody on campus, and they've all seen you, and everybody waves at each other, and they say nice things. So my rules were far, country, and little. So my schools were, one of them wasn't. Bowdoin, Pomona. Had I known better, I would have looked at Pomona, but I didn't because I was a moron. Swarthmore, it's in Pennsylvania. Middlebury, which is in Vermont, and Hamilton, which is in New York State. So that's what I'm looking for you guys to do this week. It should not take you a long time. It shouldn't get you sweaty. But I do want to highlight this stuff again. The most important thing for a college isn't if it has your major, because your major is probably going to change. And the most important thing if you have a college is does it cost, is it affordable for mom and dad? Again, that's going to change. You don't know. Financial aid helps out these things a lot. What is more important is if you go there and you feel comfortable there. Because if you go to the school and you feel like this is stupid or I hate being here or it's driving me crazy, you're going to leave and then you come back and then you're going to try and get into UMass. So I would rather you got it right the first time, and that's why these 3 questions are right. And if for some reason or other my notes didn't work, but we had our lovely PHS alumna speaking to us on AP Lang. Either way, have a nice night. Peace.